The Winter Hare by Heather Lister. My brother Marcus died 3 days ago, and there doesn't seem to be anything for me to do just now. So I sit here wondering whether I loved him or not. That's the thing with brothers and sisters, isn't it? Sometimes you do love them, and at the same time, you don't. The doctor was hopeful when Marcus fell ill. He has a good chance of survival, the doctor said. Marcus had only just turned 70, and he was a very fit man, apart from his dementia. But I had lost my brother long before the dementia. His dementia is not my excuse. Losing Marcus began as soon as we weren't children anymore. I was only 13 months younger than my brother, so I knew him all my life. When we were very young, he was just there all the time. Even when I didn't want to play with him, he would tease me. My mother called it teasing, although it always felt a little more than that to me. Marcus only had to say, "Hello, Podge," or "You've got silly ears," and an electric current would zip up my spine and burst out of my mouth in an explosion of spit and fury. One of the first lessons I remember my mother teaching me was, "Don't take any notice, then he won't do it again." It was a lesson I never learned. Marcus made me angry, but I wanted to be like him. I honoured him. I fantasised about giving my life for him. Everything he said or did was exactly right. And all I wanted in life was to be invited to join in. We weren't brought up at a time when girls were rated as being equal to boys, so it was a real aspiration. And he was beautiful, with his blonde hair and his thoughtful hooded hazel eyes. His eyelashes were darker and longer than mine too. He went to an all-boys school, so they always chose him to play the girls' part in school plays. I shall never forget his Queen of Sheba. But time passed and we both flew the nest, another of my mother's expressions. After that, we barely kept in touch. I fell in love with other men. Marcus was married and divorced twice. It wasn't until he developed dementia in his early 60s that I got to know his daughter, Emma, my niece. And she told me she had never really known him either. Marcus was a kind, dreamy sort of father, she said, but remote. I talked to his wives too. I'd always been fond of both of them, but we could never quite put Marcus together after his mind started to fail. And he'd lost his words by then, so he couldn't help us. Can I claim to have loved someone if I never really knew them as an adult? What is it that makes me feel that there was a close connection between my brother and me? I find myself going back to the high spot of our relationship, something that happened on one particular winter day when I was 9 years old. It was not long after Christmas, that weary time between the sweeping up of the paper chains and the start of a new school term. There had been a heavy snowfall, and Marcus and I were turned out of doors with our new sledge, which it was my job to pull, according to Marcus. I stamped along behind him with feigned nonchalance between the stiff black hedges on the road out of town. It had hardly got light that day, and the air was bitter. We did not need to speak. Then my brother stopped and pointed. The snowy meadows beyond the hill were white and clean, and in the distance I saw a lonely running hare, pale in its winter fur, and I could see the curved track where its flying feet had been. Suddenly, life was perfect. Endless days of school holiday left, so much time it was impossible to imagine the end of it. And if only for that one day, my feet were tolerated in my brother's footprints, although I was a whole year younger and a girl. And now we shared a wonder. When we take people close to us for granted, we sometimes have to look for that love when they die. Finding it can hurt, but it also offers a possibility that we might be healed. And that is why now, as I think of my brother, I remember that one perfect afternoon when we saw the winter hare. And I know that for all our later estrangement, for all our subsequent disagreements and faults and failures, it is, in a way, the most important thing that ever happened. And this is because as I mourn him, the memory of that winter walk comes to me as clear as day. And I understand for the first time that my brother was perfect when he was a child. And that as a child, I loved him perfectly.